Okay, so we are live now, so we can start the meeting. So, first of all, thank you, all of you, for joining us here. And I hope that in YouTube also we will have some participants. And I really want to thank Dr. Sayan sir that he accepted our invitation and delighted this session. And right now, we will be starting with a formal introduction, and then sir will continue with his talk. So, good evening, everyone, and sir. First of all, I heartily welcome you all to the 10th public lecture in 2024 organized by Cultural Studies Research Forum concerning the topic Garbage and Wasted Governmentalities, the Politics of Trash in India. Before further proceeding, here is a brief introduction of our organization, CSRF. Launched in 2022, CSRF is a student-driven non-profit dedicated to promoting intellectual curiosity. We organize free public lectures and discussion on diverse topics in cultural studies, from literature, sorry, from literature to food, dance, and music. By exposing students to cutting edge research and fostering critical thinking, we aim to empower the next generation of scholars and artists. Now, let us know a brief about our esteemed resource person, Dr. Sayan. Dr. Sayan is a distinguished scholar and decolonial thinker known for his groundbreaking research in the fields of posthumanism, decolonial studies, environmental studies. Currently serving as an assistant professor at the Department of English Studies, Bayan College, affiliated with Purdue University Northwest, Oman. Dr. Day has also held significant position at the Harriet Tubman Institute, York University, Canada, and the NYI Institute of Cultural, Cognitive, and Linguistic Studies, New York. His recent monograph, Green Academia Toward Eco-Friendly Education System and Performing Memories, Waving Archives, Serialized Culture Across the Indian Ocean, have garnered widespread acclaim for their insightful analysis and innovative perspective. Dr. Dey's research interests encompass a broad range of topics, including critical race studies, culinary epistemologies, and critical diversity, diversity literacy. Yeah. Today we are privileged to have Dr. Dey with us to discuss his forthcoming book, Garvakesi Towards the Great Human Collapse. In this presentation, Dr. Dey will delve into the intricate relationship between garbage and the governing structure of India, exploring how caste, class, and economic factors intersect to shape the politics of trash. Drawing on concrete examples from cities like Kolkata, Varanasi, Bangalore, and others, Dr. Dey will offer a compelling analysis of the social environment and political implications of waste management in India. With that saying, I am delighted to call Dr. Sayan Desai to enhance our knowledge on this impactful topic.
Thank you so much, Coel, for this very warm invitation and the warm introduction. Um, and also, I do appreciate all of you for joining in. A very good evening from a very warm and sunny Muscat in Oman. Um, so just to add on to the brief introduction shared by Coel already, that what I am intending to talk about, I would like to do a small correction. I mean, obviously, it's been rightly mentioned that this presentation that I'm going to share, um, will be very much centered on my forthcoming monograph titled Garbocracy. And but it is not exactly a book talk per se. It's kind of sharing some perspectives that I've been working for quite some time now with respect to the question of garbage, right? Now, I presume that within the joinees who have all come here, they're from India. Even if you're not from India, I'm pretty sure that we are all aware of the fact that how waste disposal, waste accumulation have been one of the essential causal factors for the rise of pollution around us. Whether we are talking about water pollution, I mean, plastic being a major reason, plastic being a major factor behind causing a lot of water pollution and land pollution. If we talk about air pollution, if we talk about other forms of chemical pollution, industrial pollution, domestic pollution, various other forms of pollution, we see that waste accumulation and disposal, whether we are doing it as a part of our day-to-day basis at our homes, or whether we are doing it as a part of our existence within the within our work institutions, or whether we are doing it as a, or whether it's being done as a part of the public public activities like businesses or health and hygiene, whatever it is. Waste management is a big concern, and across India we see, and because I am going to centralize my thought sharing in the Indian perspective. So within the Indian context, we see that waste accumulation and waste disposal is a major issue. And we have been talking on and off, I mean, for the past few decades, for the past few, I mean, if not centuries, at least for the past few decades, with the tumultuous rise in climate catastrophes, in environmental disasters, multiple factors, multiple human-made factors have contributed to such scenarios. But obviously, one major factor is the accumulation, is the improper disposal of wastes. And no matter wherever we stay, wherever we come from, we cannot deny the fact that we have all undergone gone this experience in one way or the other. I mean, we walk through the streets and the lanes where we find that garbage from the balconies and the windows, are hurled out onto the street. If you are going to, near the water bodies, where we are visiting the river banks, we are visiting the sea coasts, and we see they're all, flooded with plastics, with garbage, with trash that people have accumulated while visiting the places. If we go to these public parks, we see same kind of story, despite the fact that proper dustbins, proper waste bins have been installed at different corners. People are so ignorant, people are so reluctant to use them, right? Now, the question is, I don't think we really need to sit here and justify and tell each other that the improper disposal of wastes is a problem. I really don't think we have to sit here and kind of discuss and argue that why, disposal of waste should be systemic in nature. But then, in spite of so much of awareness campaigns, initiatives in terms of rules and regulations, why there is a reluctance, why there is a deep down reluctance in a sensible and a conscious disposal of waste in daily life, right? Now, uh, I ask this question as I'm thinking loudly. So it's basically, I invite you all also to think loudly with me in the process. Now, the question is, when I ask this question, I found that it's not just an issue about being aware and not being aware. It's not just an issue about being conscious and not being conscious, but there are wider concerns. There are wider concerns. For instance, I personally found that the disposal, the patterns, of disposing waste. The patterns of gathering and disposing waste is actually quite a cultural issue. It's a political issue. It could be a religious issue. It could be a historical issue, and so on and so forth. And I'll give you very specific examples, very specific instances from my field research that has been conducted thus far about how these processes or these perspectives are a kind of are very intersectionally played out. It's not just about health, it's not just about hygiene, it's not just about not being aware about the health and the hygiene concerns that the waste disposal, public waste disposal causes, but it's also very, very profoundly about our cultural status, about class status. Even we can talk about the racial status. Now, the places that I have, mentioned here, like Kolkata, Varanasi, Bangalore, it could be New Delhi as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned New Delhi, but we can bring in New Delhi as well, and also other parts of the country. But I specifically mentioned these 2 to 3 places because I am from Kolkata. I was born and brought up there. Prior to heading out to for my higher studies in 2008. I stayed in Varanasi for 10 years. Obviously 10 years is not a sufficient time, but it's quite some time. I stayed for a few years around the New Delhi NCR region. Didn't stay for a long time in Bangalore, but Bangalore has always been, because I have friends and relatives there. So Bangalore has always been a place where I have frequently visited. So these are and why I share these perspectives, because it's essential, for me to let you know that why specifically I'm talking about these 4 places, or to be more clear, what qualifies me rather to, really comment and critique about the question, about the cultural perspectives, about the social perspectives, about the political perspectives of wastes in regards to these locations, which obviously doesn't mean that the other parts of India is not facing the same problem, right? Now, it's in my locality. So basically, I stay in the northern parts, and I'm starting with this instance because widely the subtitle of my talk reads as the politics of trash. So how trash is politicized, how trash can be a propaganda, can be a political propaganda, right? So the locality in northern Kolkata where I stay, basically it's a place where mostly the people who are the residents, they are very anti-right wing, and also very pro left wing in nature. So they are not big supporters of the present political government as well. So usually what happens when the votings take place during the municipal votes or the state votes or the regional votes, whenever it happens, so obviously it's expected that being pro left wing, they don't vote for the popular political party out there in West Bengal. Now, eventually what happens is on majority of the occasions it has happened that despite they voted for the left, but it is the present political government, the present ruling party, who took over the municipality corporation, and ultimately as a sort of, as a form of, resistance, as a form of, taking advantage of the scenario, they would actually treat the locality where we stay as kind of very alienated, as kind of not really part of their developmental scheme. And how do they do that? One of the very interesting ways of doing that is to dispose of trash from the adjacent localities into the roads of our localities. So the interesting part was, for a long period of time, we would see that the municipality waste collectors, right, they would be collecting trash from the adjacent localities like domestic trash, domestic waste. Even from what was really dangerous was that they would even carry all of these discarded bed sheets, discarded mattresses and furnitures from the adjacent health centers, right? And then they would just come and dispose it off on the street. And there has been endless number of, so we initially there were resistances, there were protests, and but nothing really happened. And you see, the surprising part is it's not random people who are hurling waste or throwing down waste into the public spaces. It is the municipality corporation people, the waste collectors, whose responsibility is to clean the environment, is to keep the environment, keep the public areas clean. They are the ones who are basically taking an initiative to sort of kind of make the scenario in our locality so unhygienic and so problematic, right? And initially, there were many letters of complaints that were sent to the municipality. It fell into deaf ears. People went to meet the municipal head, but the thing is, no one really wanted to meet us from a locality. On most of the occasions, we were shoved off by one of their personal assistants, saying that we need not be entertained. We are not supposed to be entertained because when it is required, we don't vote the political party and support it. So we shouldn't expect any service from them. So, you see, this is one particular example, which very clearly and directly shows that how the accumulation and disposal of trash is not just a casual exercise. It's not just something which we just do out of ignorance. Rather, on the contrary, if we look at these bigger pictures, if we look at the question of politicization of trash, if we look at how trash becomes an agency of political propaganda, we see we get more, we get involved in bigger and complex pictures. Sorry. Okay. So we get involved in more kind of complex pictures. So this is one incident which very deeply shows that how politics comes into the process of trashing in daily life. And I give you a second example. I give you a second instance. The second instance is from Varanasi. As I say, that I was staying there for 10 years. So I went to pursue my higher studies there. So when I was staying there, I used to stay in a locality near, the BHU campus, because that is where I was pursuing my higher studies there. So when I was staying there in locality, again, the locality was kind of a Muslim predominant locality. And I think we are all very well aware of the issue of class and communal fractions that have always been a part of our historical existence in the country, and how in the recent times, how in the recent moments, the situations of communal and caste fractions have further aggravated, right? And as a result, what happened was the locality where I used to stay was being a Muslim predominant locality. It was subjected to systemic ignorance by a lot of these communal corporation people. And in fact, what is really interesting is, again, if you look at the trash problem, the same kind of situation was there when trash was collected from the adjacent localities and they were dumped right into the locality where I used to stay. And again, the same process, complaints were launched, things fell into deaf ears. And when we saw that similar issues being faced by other localities were very rigorously and sincerely addressed, while being a predominantly Muslim locality, when same kind of issues were raised and they were left unaddressed, the whole attitude and the approach, the kind of communal biases, the religious biases of the local municipality organization could not be ignored. Obviously, these sort of perspectives do not remain open, or these sort of perspectives are not sort of documented in the rules and regulations. By default, they are expected to address, by rules and regulations, they're expected to address the issues of health and hygiene and cleanliness equally in every localities. But when we come across these sort of scenarios, we very clearly see that the situation, that the practical way of approach is deep down very fractured, very different, and also it's very much subtly underpinned with certain communal design, certain cultural perspectives, certain political colorization, and various other interrelated issues. In Bangalore, we see, apart from these issues, Bangalore, there is a huge, and again, it's not again in Bangalore, we can see the same thing in Kolkata and Varanasi as well, that caste perspectives also, do play an important role in sort of the procedures and the ways of how certain areas requires to be kept clean and hygienic, and why certain areas need not remain clean and hygienic. Because I'm still continuing with this research, and while doing this research, I also interviewed several waste collectors, rag pickers, and how they express their their sadness, their disappointment, that how they are the ones who goes around the different communities and localities to collect wastes, while they are the ones who take the responsibility of keeping the localities clean. On the other hand, they are also subjected on a daily basis, different forms of marginalization, different forms of ignorance. And also what happens is, eventually they are not treated any different from trash. So when I use the term politics of trash, it's important. So the first point was, obviously, when I was talking about the politics of trash, I was talking about the aspect that how the processes of disposing trash is politicized, how selective areas, localities, and are treated as regions which can be trashed openly through various forms or through various justifications of political propagandas. At the same time, we also see eventually that how communities itself, how certain communities, because of their certain forms of cultural belonging, communal affiliations, caste affiliations, are treated not less than trash. And this is what centrally my work has been dealing with, that when we use the word trash, or when we talk about garbage, does it only mean the object garbage, or it also means something that is ideological, that is physical, that is communal, that is psychological? And what happens is, why I specifically brought this topic today to the forefront is because somewhere, somewhat, we are all dealing with some sort of trash in our daily life. We are not just dealing with trash objects. We are not just dealing with trash stuffs as physical objects, as material objects, but we are also dealing with trash ideologies. We are also dealing with trash cultures. We are also dealing with trash politics. We are dealing with trash people, right? There are so many different avenues, so many perspectives. We are living in an era in general. I'm not just talking about now mentioning of the Indian perspective, but also in general across the globe, we see that we are so much sort of restricted by multiple forms of cancel cultures, surveillances, and censorships in our life. What we can speak, what we can wear, how we can think, what we can express, where do we express. So can we deny that such kind of problematic approaches, which are preventing us or depriving us from free thinking, free expressions, free modes of critique, are anything less than trash attitudes or trash intellectual approaches? I don't think so, at least. Maybe you can share your thoughts and perspectives. But what is really important to talk about is that when we engage with this whole question, whole narrative of trash, it is important for us to look through these very essential intersections, very important intersections. Like for instance, in Bangalore, where I used to stay while working there, it's kind of in the geographical outskirts, right? And you see a clear cut difference in the approach of the municipality, of the concerns of the municipality corporation, to clean the to make sure that the areas in the center of the city are clean and healthy and hygienic, whereas the places which are outskirts, geographically in the outskirts of the main city, they are kind of treated as dumping zones. Like for instance, because my workplace was pretty near to the place where I stayed, so that was the central reason why I chose not to stay in the center of the city, but to kind of stay in a bit of the outskirts. And almost every day I would see that the locality where I used to stay, it had beautiful lakes around, it has a natural green spaces, and every day, trucks would come in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, and they would dump, basically literally dump the all the trash that they have collected from different parts of the city into the locality, and they would just dump it out into some of those natural forest areas, or they would just go near the river and they will dump it out there. And when there will be a tremendous accumulation of trash, obviously they will burn it out, right? So these things you see. Now the question is that if as on the one side you have all of these tactics, that okay, there is a separate dustbin for wet waste, there is a separate dustbin for paper waste, there is a separate dustbin for dry waste, and so on and so forth. And on the other side, you see such a problematic, ignorant attitude of disposing trash off into localities, the localities that are far away from the mainstream existence, the localities which are not very frequently visited by the tourists or the city people, the localities which won't be audiovisually, which cannot be audiovisually framed or exposed into the social media. Those are the localities, those are the spaces. And when we talk about localities, we're not just talking about the physical entity of a locality. We are talking about the locality as a cultural space. We are talking about the locality as a communal space, locality as a regional space, locality as an environmental space, right? So those specific localities which are far away from the crowd from the central city crowd are strategically often chosen as places to dispose of trash. And this cannot be, honestly, I believe to a certain extent, if not entirely, you will agree with me that this honestly cannot be referred to as something, oh, it's just a casual act, or oh, well, we don't know where to dispose of the trash, oh, well, we don't know, we don't have sufficient waste management plan, so we really don't know what to do with the trash. Why specific locations are chosen to dispose of trash? Why specific timelines or time frames are chosen to dispose of trash at different points of time? I remember, like, going back to the example in Kolkata, prior to the political leaders, prior to votes, right, they would go around the localities, and what they would do is, while going around the localities, they would basically go at the doorsteps of the residents and ask for votes, right? At that point of time, our locality would be completely cleaned. The whole trash would be removed from there in a few hours. Just in a few hours, the whole trash would be removed from there. All the roads would be covered with bleaching powders and all form of hygiene powders, etc. And the leaders just walk around, and the media persons take photos, and the fan followers would click photos and show it off, that you see, under this particular leadership, how wonderfully the areas have been maintained, blah blah blah. And from the very next day, it's the same old story. From the very next day, it's the same old story. And I'm sharing these perspectives is very personal experience. It's not that I've heard from somebody or I have seen these pictures from somebody. Obviously, I have many interviews to share, but many of these elements that today I'm sharing with you are deep down, very personally experienced. So when we take into these elements, basically we see that how a culture of conformism, how a culture which has its different roots of evolution. We can, in some places where industries create trash or trash out their wastes into the lakes and rivers that are located in the outskirts of the main city, where you see there is a sort of capitalistic intention to generate trash. We see that, in places like Kolkata, we see the whole politics. It has to do with political connections. It has to do with political parties. It has to do with the question of vote bank politics. In Varanasi, we would often see the vote bank politics was very common. So there are different other factors. And then it also enables the very process of labeling certain communities as, oh, these community people from these particular communities are so are so unhygienic, are so dirty, they live such an unhygienic life. And I have grown up with these narratives, hearing them from my relatives, that don't mix with people of so and so caste, or don't mix up with people of so and so race or so and so religion, because they are very unhygienic, they are very dirty, they are culturally very backward. This whole concept. And when you listen to this, when you reflect back, you see that trash, the element of trash, today we are living with so much of trash, whether we are talking about the environment from an environmental concern, whether we are talking from a cultural concern, whether we are talking from a intellectual concern. We see that trash, the process of trashing, the process of treating certain ideologies, perspectives, materials as trash, has always been a very deep down essential part of our upbringing. If not probably everybody's upbringing, but for sure many of us upbringing, where we were taught to identify trash, not just, or to treat or understand the whole notion of trash, whole notion of waste, not just as a material object, but as an ideology, as a vision, as an intellectual lens, as other forms of different forms of dimensions. So that is centrally what I sort of conceptualize as the politics of trash, where I do argue very strongly about the politics of garbaging, where I see that garbage is not just an object again, but it's also about, just I would like put the phrase out there. So when I talk about the politics of garbaging, it is not just about accumulating and disposing waste, but the whole process of converting certain aspects of life into waste. How do we do that? What is the history behind that? I mean, already a lot of works have been generated around understanding waste, not just as a material object, but as a cultural component as well, for example. And in fact, in case you would be interested to do really, do further readings or delve into this space of research, maybe you may, and if you are already doing that, I'm sure you would be knowing there is this works like garbology. Let me keep writing as I share with you. I think it was published in 2012. It's by Edward Hughes, who actually understands garbage from a very anthropological perspective. And what he talks about in that work is this whole fetishism of the people, this whole fetishism that has established with capitalism, that whether we require an object or not, we always have this tendency of accumulating a lot of objects. Just because somebody else is having something in their house, I also need that thing in their house. No matter if it is required, whether I require it or I don't require it, that's a different story. So, you have these perspectives, you have these concerns where you see that where the process of disposal, people are afraid of disposing. So, he talks about a very interesting concept. He talks about disposophobia, where people are so much seduced towards this whole process of accumulating things in their life, just because they think that gives them a special status or a special elevated existence in the human society. They keep on doing it without really understanding what are we supposed to use it for, right? Then we have also another very interesting book called it's a recent work, very recent work. It's called the Vestiocene. I think the work, and it's an open access work, by the way. You can just search Vestiocene. It's published in 2021. It's by Marco Armiero. He happens to be a very prominent, significant name in the field of critical waste studies, where waste is studied through the perspectives of cultures and traditions and all of these elements. And if you look at his work, you also see where he talks about that how wastes are politicized, how wastes are generated based on certain racial affiliations, cultural affiliations, political affiliations, and how it is not just about the object, but it is also about the mindset. It is also about the approach. It is also about our attitude towards each other, which also deeply connects to the process of producing wastes, process of accumulating wastes. And that is what he refers to as a Vestiocene. He kind of starts his argument with this fact that we are no longer in this era of Anthropocene. And I'm pretty sure those who are already working or those who are familiar with these concepts of post-human studies, post-Anthropocene, Anthropocene, there is so much of talk, so much of conversations going around, with the extreme increase, with the extreme rise of environmental disasters. We are becoming more and more concerned with our own existence. We are becoming more and more insecure with our existence. So gradually, Marco talks about how we move from, how we have sort of moved away from a situation of Anthropocene towards a post-Anthropocene era where everything and anything is not human-centered. And that is where one of the components, according to Marco, in the post-Anthropocene era is the Vestiocene, where wastes become an essential part of our existence. Whether it becomes a kind of indispensable component of a life, right? I mean, if you look at the usage of plastic, right? In fact, Ranjan Ghosh talks about this a lot in his work called Plastic Turn. That plastic, I mean, it's a part of life. It feels like we and plastics are and other forms of waste are sort of in a cobwebbed way. Like we are intertwined, we are inseparable, as if we are living like a family, like a cohort, right? In this world, whether we are realizing it, whether we are not realizing it, that's a different story. But especially when Ranjan Ghosh talks about plastic, like he says that, we often don't realize that how plastics are just a part and parcel of our existence. It's not just about a polythene. It's not just about an object. It's also reflected in our behavior, in our perspectives of life. So the thing is, and there is another book that I would like to mention to you before coming back again is Waste of a Nation, Its Garbage and Growth in India. Let me write it down for you. I'm just sharing these with you so that in case you would be interested to delve into this space and you're already doing it. Just keep forgetting, yeah, first names of the authors. So if you also look at this work, in fact, Waste of a Nation is centered in India. It was published back in 2018. It's centered in India, and very interestingly, the authors basically have conducted an exhaustive research about how caste and class intersect in the existence of the life of the waste collectors. And it's a wonderful work, and in this work they have conducted several interviews, and as a part of the interviews, basically they share the waste collectors, the rag pickers share that how they are themselves treated as trash, and how being this profession of being a waste collector or a rag picker is deeply rooted or associated with the question of one's cultural affiliations, one's caste affiliations, one's religious affiliations. And already, I mean, I'm sure you have read, there's a lot of articles, a lot of research has already been conducted that how trash and caste, especially in the field of Dalit studies, a lot of research have already been done that how trash and caste, they intertwine with each other. And why I gave you this background while talking of my research, why I slightly went into this space, is to share with you that it's not the I am not the first one who is really talking about the politics of trash in India. I mean, probably the politics of trash in India is being so so clearly fleshed out through my work, probably would be very clearly fleshed out through my perspectives in my forthcoming work. But then a lot of people have already talked about it, not just in India, not with reference to India, but across the world. Because what I'm trying to share with you is not just a local concern, it's not just a national concern, it's a global concern. If we really have to, the whole purpose of talking about the politics of trash is, obviously it's manifold, but one of the major purposes is to invite all of us to think that if we really have to address the garbage issue, if we really have to engage with the question of waste accumulation and disposal, we cannot just treat it as a scientific process. We just cannot tell that, okay, we can establish sufficient waste management plans. We can have, very efficient waste management procedures. We can impose fines on the people, and the issues will be sorted. And we have ample of examples around to tell that the issues are not getting sorted because a vast part of the accumulation and disposal of waste materials is deeply rooted in our mindsets, in our cultural roots, in our social roots, in our political ideologies and approaches, in our social statuses. And these things need to be deeply thought about if we are really thinking about effective policies, if we are really thinking about effective initiatives. And the lack of understanding of this is one of the major reasons why we see that despite the fact that so many endless number of policies and initiatives and schemes and funds have been allocated, really, at least in the Indian perspective, really a lot of differences are not taking place. Obviously, I don't deny the fact that there are different pockets, there are different spaces within the country where personal and collective community initiatives are making significant differences, but then they are just in bits and pieces. What we are really lacking is the collective realization and the collective effort. And one of the many reasons, there are multiple reasons we are lacking there could be multiple reasons for which we are lacking the effort. And obviously, one of the many reasons is our failure to understand waste as a cultural problem, as an ideological problem, as a political problem. In nutshell, waste as a problem beyond its materialistic entity, beyond its materialistic identity. I think I'll stop here. Thank you so much for being so patient. It's a weekend. I know it's not easy to join in an evening on a weekend, but thanks for joining in. And yeah, I would be happy to receive your questions and thought processes and agreements and disagreements.
Thank you, sir, for extending your impactful experiences with us. And those actually boost our idea about the concerned topic in an interesting yet knowledgeable way. Now, I would like to if anyone have any queries or something to say to Dr. Sayan Day, sir, they can just communicate with me. Please come forward.
I think Tanya has a question, which I think mistakenly she just directed me directly. But I'll just read it out for all of us and then would like to go ahead and respond. Um, so with the current political climate in India and its foothold on the Indian academia, how do you see outspoken, unbiased, revolutionary, idealistic professors being censored from speaking upon so-called non-traditional topics, even being conformed to the point they stop from guiding young researchers on volatile and on volatile and politically inclined topics for research in India? How do you see the light at the end of this very suffocating academic climate in India, where there is so much corruption, um, publish and perish culture, predatory journals? Yes, I think, yeah, Tanya, thank you for this. Thank you for this very important question. I think it's the important point to start off with is, again, the whole process of realization of that, how we are consistently being stuck in the same zone of problems despite so many initiatives at the policy making level, is the lack of our transformation in our mindsets. Because we see that when we talk about this mindset, it appears to be a very simple perspective, right? And people here would all agree that we are all aware that mindsets need to be changed, but we really don't know how to bring a collective transformation in our mindsets and perspectives. And what we see is, and I think your question very deeply connects to the concept of garbage intellectualism, what I really talk about in my work, and where I actually very openly talk about the questions, the concerns that you have raised, that if my perspectives, if my aspects doesn't conform to the popular norms, then I really don't deserve to speak. I really don't deserve to exist. Now, the question is, when we talk about transformation, it's not easy way out. There is no easy way out. But the first and the foremost thing is a collective realization. If we ask the simple question, are we collectively realizing this? That even if I am, for being a part of the popular space, for gaining overnight celebrityship, even if I'm conforming myself to a very local zone of ideas, or if I'm conforming myself to the surveillances and the censorships, and I'm carrying forward that culture and imposing this on others, to what extent I am damaging? I am already damaging not only myself, but my community in general, my society around in general. This question needs to be asked, and this realization has to be fleshed out through this question. We are hardly patient, we are hardly being able to do that, because what is happening majorly is we feel that, okay, if we sit with the popular opinion, what happens is, we are always on the advantageous side. We can draw the fruits out of it and meet our personal desires. But climate change, surveillances, censorships, political brutality, cultural brutalities consistently make us realize that during such sort of scenarios, none of us are spared. Whether I am going in with the popular opinion, or whether I am not, I am on the side of the anti-popular opinion, none of us are spared. But very unfortunately, we are so much stuck in this rat race culture, this pressure cooker culture that has been so well normalized by capitalism, that we really don't take a moment to think about this, to self contemplate and transform ourselves accordingly. And that is the reason why we are so much carried away by AI and hyper intelligence and robots and androids and all of these things, which looks from the outset very glamorous, but then again, in a lot of ways, they need to be questioned, and the concerns need to be expressed, rather than sitting and blindedly celebrating them. Yes, so I think I will sort of put my response there, Tanya. I see there is another question in the chat box, but maybe I'll first would like to invite Shayantan. Maybe Shayantan, you can go ahead with your question, and then I can go back to the chat box.
Yeah. So, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
So first of all, thank you, Professor Day, for such a fascinating lecture. I mean, I get to know a lot of things from, and looking forward to your book. So actually, I am working on the area of sociology of smell. Okay, particularly the relation between smell and caste, and basically smell and inequality largely. So I'm sort of curious to know about, since you're talking about garbage and trash and all the politics of garbage, do you think there is sort of an olfactory politics involved in the entire sort of agenda, if you like, of dumping garbage in particular areas, making the relation between space and olfaction much more politicized? Hmm. This is one. And secondly, yeah, as you rightly mentioned regarding the relation between time, space, and trash, sort of dumping trash, I could remember reading text on Kolkata, as you also worked in Kolkata. There was a thing, I think, pre-independence. There's a sort of a rail track established to sort of move the garbage carriages from one place to another in some parts of Kolkata. That doesn't exist nowadays. And the timing was very interesting, so that the babus, when they used to go to office, doesn't hamper their nostrils or their sort of crossing the path. It was made very early in the morning. So there is an issue of temporality within the garbage collection here. So this is points I wanted to make. And if you could suggest me any paper on any book on relation to smell and trash, or smell and craft, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, Shayantan, thank you so much for both the perspectives. And I mean, first of all, you are working on something which is very fascinating about the smell and caste, and very, very timely as well, I must say. Especially, where we see in a time we are staying where the communal and religious intolerances are growing. I'm sure many of us have grown up with this particular narrative that a certain community or people from certain caste and people from certain religion, they smell bad, or they have too much of skin infections, or they are dirty. I was just mentioning that. And also the smell also, the olfactorial perspective also, comes very deeply here. And absolutely, I mean, when we talk about the question of trash, if you're talking about the politics of trash, we are also talking about the politics of smell as well. How with certain communities, certain cultures, smell is associated. We interpret some smell as pious, we interpret some smell as spiritual, we also interpret some smell simultaneously as discardable. We also interpret some smell as unhygienic. So obviously olfactorial perspectives, they do in general play an essential role in sort of constructing identities, and also politically, they have always played an important role in labeling certain communities culturally, historically, intellectually, and in terms of hygienically as well. So obviously, Shayantan, what you share is, I think the olfactorial perspectives are deep down in the process of disposing trash in certain localities, because those localities should smell disgusting. The people, the localities, the appearance, the smell, the aroma across the localities should be disgusting, should be problematic. Otherwise, these sort of political narratives that how some communities, how some cultures, how some societies are by default discardable doesn't really get systematized. So obviously, the olfactorial roles do play an important olfactorial perspectives do play an important role in these in the narrative of garbaging, in the narrative of trash disposal as well. And I think your second point also connects to the very deeply to the first point, that how certain moments, how it is essential to keep the garbage out of the view of certain communities at the cost of putting some communities into absolute state of unhygiene, into an absolute state of disgust, in an absolute state of trash. And I think this whole process, the example that you shared is very interesting. And yes, I have been very much aware of these narratives where because certain kind of people would, and I think it also very deeply connects to what I shared, that one of these political leaders, when they would come to beg vote at the doorsteps, at that time the streets would be entirely clean, because in front of them the garbage cannot exist, because then obviously their intentions of being there will contradict to what is being seen in reality. That cannot happen, right? So things have to be systemically covered. So
Yes.
a similar manner, we see a same kind of approach, a same kind of attitude in what you shared, as that when these high caste babus or the English babus will actually, walk to their offices in the morning, or will come out of the carriages, the trash has to be removed right from their vision, right from their existence. They shouldn't pass through the areas which smells bad. And I think this sort of attitude we can keep talking about it, and this sort of attitude have very interestingly synced with the concept of urban constructions. Even today we
Absolutely.
see that the mainstream locations, the so-called posh locations, where you see the when the political leaders come out of the airport on their convoys and they pass through the locations, those locations appear to be like clean and clear, and with extreme high rises and clean streets and well organized buildings, etc. But when one travels beyond or behind those high rises, high rising complexes, you see dumps of trash, lakes being choked with trash, trash being burned, and the air being polluted with toxic gases and whatnot. When Trump came to India overnight, in one
Yes.
of the
Yes.
slum areas of Gujarat, in a location, one of the roads of Gujarat that had a kind of well built like a big slum area, and Trump was supposed to pass through that overnight. A kind of wall was built so that Trump do not and his group do not get to see there. So what do you cover up? We cover up something that is unimportant. We cover up something that is disposable. We cover up something that is discardable. And in that way, we convert humans, their strategies, their existences, their perspectives, their pains, their agonies, their sufferings also into something that is trashable enough. I think
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
stop.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And just curious, if it's okay to ask, I mean, the area you mentioned in North Kolkata, may I know which area you're talking about? I mean, just
Yes. It's actually the Paikpara area. The
Paikpara. Okay. Okay.
the Belgachia Paikpara area.
Acha, acha, acha. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Yes. I see there is another question in the chat box from Mo. First and foremost, thank you very much for the interesting session. Thank you, Mo, for reflections. We are dealing with trash, slam, shit, dang, and so on. And slang culture is more or less tied to trash culture. Oh, totally. So, and how we elites also, how we how the mind is being warped as a result of the entire company. Even now we elites pronounce backward classes as trash. Absolutely. And I think these are very important points, Mo, because the thing is, as I said, that as in more and more we investigate the narrative of trash beyond its materialistic identity, more and more we would be able to see that how trash is deeply integrated within our existence, within our lingua, within our mindset, within our cultural perspectives, within our approaches, within our curriculums, pedagogies, food habits, everything. Like, within our popular cultures, we can take examples and we can keep going on. And it's important for us to realize that process. It's important for us to understand that if we have to really deal with this concern, the roots just doesn't lie in the question of ignorance. The roots just doesn't lie in the question of health, hygiene, and sciences. it's further rooted, it's further down, it's more complex. And also we have to take into account all of these complexities and confusions before we are able to really understand, or before we are able to really question the existing policies and talk about new policies and perspectives and approaches. I saw there was another hand. Sorry, I don't know. I may be
No,
mistaken.
sir, there was one, actually Harshit Sharma. Do you
Oh, okay,
have
okay.
anything to say?
Yes. Hello, sir. How
Yeah.
are you?
Hi, Harshit. Thank you. How have I been?
So good to hear you. So, as you were talking, it just got me thinking that do you think so that colonialism has anything to do with the politics of garbage which you're talking about? Since, like, taking an example, as Amitabh Ghosh talks about how a poppy flower has a rich history, and you took the example of how he goes back, how India was exploited and everything. So, do you think so that if the this garbage thing is historicized, so it will trace its roots back to post-colonialism? Because since we are a culture of river worshippers and Indus Valley civilization, and still today people are deciphering its urbanization and everything. So it just got me thinking. So a very thought-provoking lecture, sir, as you always do. But has it related to anything to colonialism or like any markers of it?
Great. Thank you, Harshit, so much for your question. I think it's a very important question, and absolutely, colonialism does have a very important role to play in terms of building up this narrative of trash, um, as a culture, as a political ideology. In not only colonialism, though, we cannot alone blame colonialism for it, but indeed, colonialism played a very important role here, not just in India, across the world. Even today, we see how the global south is used as a ground of flashing, a ground of flushing industrial wastes and chemical wastes, and we can also see how hardware wastes and all of these things coming from the global north and are being
Yeah.
trashed onto the global south. And in fact, it's important to mention that global south is a major market of because trash is not just an object for discard, but the trash is a big industry as well, like scrap metal industry. Global south happens to be the biggest. Some of the countries, in fact South Asia, in China, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh,
Bangladesh,
Sri
yes.
Lanka, parts of Southeast Asia happens to be the biggest consumers of scrap metals, like happens to be the biggest scrap metal industries of the services and scrap metal industries of the global north, right? And so it's very interesting to see that not only colonialism had it, and all of these roots actually lies in colonialism. I mean, when you look at uh, how certain locations, like if you look at a lot of the histories, in fact, when we look at medical colonization, if you look at the histories of a lot of diseases, of the outbreaks of different epidemics at the time of the colonial existence, many of these epidemics broke out because of the industrial trash, because of the industrial trash that were emanated into these very rural regions, geographically rural places, where discarded the industries and the factories that were established by the British and the Scottish and the Irish, and prior to that, a bit of by the Dutch and the French and the Portuguese, mostly by the British, Scottish, and Irish, by the way. The kind of trash they generated into the water bodies eventually led to the outbreak of different forms of bacterial diseases, viral diseases, different forms of diseases caused by chemical infections. And a lot of these diseases were imported in India by the trash accumulated by Europe. And today, across the world, the process in different forms continues. A lot of the water bodies in the African regions, in the North African regions, in the Western African regions, a lot of the water bodies a lot of our oceans in the global south are consistently being trashed, used as trash bins by the industrial sectors, by the government sectors, by the political sectors of the global north. So it is essential to remember that not only that colonizers played an important role in accumulating, in kind of introducing this trash culture, where not only in terms of objects, but in terms of communities and society and caste and race as well, but at the same time, the process continues to date.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If anyone has any question, then they can. Sir, though this is a separate topic of today, but I just want to know, because I know that you are an expert of decolonial studies. So, would you please prefer to talk about a little about how we can relate this, this concerned topic with decolonity?
Oh, I think there are many perspectives through which we can bring in decoloniality very strongly, because the first and the foremost thing, restricting a problem within specific disciplinary dimensions, like the problem of trash is only a problem of waste management, or the problem of trash is a lack of sufficient science and technology, is itself a very colonial approach of addressing an issue. The reluctance or the lack of realization that the colonial problem or the colonial issue is actually, and the lack of realization that these issues are intersectional in nature, is itself a deep down colonial attitude, right? That's number one thing. And to engage in an intersectional study of trash is a very decolonial approach in a way. Number two thing is the introduction of these very significant fields of study. Now we are talking about environmental humanities, we are talking about waste studies, we are talking about plant studies. I mean, people like Shumana Roy from Ashoka University, people like John Ryan from I think he's currently somewhere in Netherlands, but he's from Australia. These people, and there are many others, who are talking about plant studies, who are talking about critical animal studies. Already works like Donna Haraway has already done works like the Dog Manifesto, the Species Manifesto, where you talk about dogs, you talk about cats. I mean, or she has done this work in a time when people will literally laugh at you if you're writing a book on dogs or cats, right? From a cultural studies perspective. So, things have already been challenged, and it's important that we engage with the issue directly rather than beating around the bush. And this whole culture of beating around the bush within the academic space, within the research space, is widely derived from a very colonial set of learning, like where you construct a knowledge system which is founded on the narratives of selective acceptance and selective ignorance. And we are still, unfortunately, continuing with that sort of problematic knowledge system. And we really need to sit and question and revisit that. And I think engagements with these spaces from very tangential perspectives, from very tangential pathways, I think is itself a very decolonial approach. And in fact, not just theoretically, but very deeply, in terms of methods, in terms of praxis as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us. Uh, so I think it's already time to wrap up.
Oh, there is one small question. Maybe if I can just address that. Shreya asks, I'm curious in what ways this particular area can be linked with subject of mental health. Oh, well, I mean, in what ways it cannot be, it can be, for example, whenever we have, just imagine, I mean, we don't even have to go into deep theories. We have to imagine, just imagine a situation. Every day you are sitting in a locality, you are staying in a locality where every morning you open up your windows to see heaps of trash outside your house, or you open the window, instead of the fresh air, early morning air, you get a disgusting smell. And that sort of completely makes you feel disgusted disgusted. Just imagine waking up with this sort of disgusting experience on a daily basis, and what kind of impact it is going to have it on your mental health. Because, our daily ways, we often would say, why do we look for spaces, living spaces, which are enough, have enough light, enough, it's enough ventilated, naturally ventilated, so that air can pass freely. Why do we do that? It's not just for the sake of health and hygiene and oxygen. Obviously they are essential factors, but it is also that feel good factor, and the feel good factor is actually a very mental state of being. So obviously, how trash, a lot of things can be done, how the daily process of collecting garbage from localities and being treated as trash impacts the waste collectors mentally, psychologically, can be a very good area of study. How one can understand, or how one can actually, or as a resident, if one has to daily live with trash, walk with trash, stay with trash, and live around and smell trash on a daily basis, what kind of impact it has on their moods, what kind of impact it has on their behavioral patterns, thought processes. It can also be a very strong area of study, and there could be many other avenues as well.
I hope we received her answer quite well. Okay, sir. So with your permission, and after a vote of thanks, we will wrap up the session. So good evening once again to everyone. As we conclude this insightful and thought-provoking session, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Sayan Day for his illuminating presentation on garbage and wasted governmentalities, the politics of trash in India. Dr. Day's profound analysis has not only shed light on the complex and often overlooked issue of waste management, but has also challenged us to rethink our relationship with the environment and society. His interdisciplinary approach, which seamlessly blends decolonial theory, environmental studies, and critical social theory, has opened up new avenues for research and activism. We are truly honored to have had the opportunity to learn from such a distinguished scholar. His work inspires us to strive for a more just, equitable, and sustainable future. Thank you, sir, for your invaluable insight and for sharing your passion with us. Also, I would like to thank with all sincerity Dr. Kalyani Bhalat ma'am and Anand Haridas sir for being truly supportive for all our ventures. Last but not the least, I would like to express my thanks to all the attendees who contributed to the success to this event. Until we meet again, continue to explore it well. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, all of you. And I have put my email ID already in the chat box. Feel free to write to me if you have questions, anything you would like to share. And I'm very regular in responses, and I'll be very happy to engage in a conversation with you. Please take care, stay well, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.